Let's talk about football from the weekend, because I think there were some really significant games, and I think this Utah story is big. Is Lincoln Riley failing USC, or is Utah just really good? I think it's both. I think Lincoln Riley has been a disappointment now, and I don't think that's too strong to say. Lincoln Riley came in with a lot of bravado, a lot of promises, a lot of hype, and a hell of a lot of talent, including Caleb Williams, that is currently getting their ass kicked in the Pac-12. And this weekend was a perfect example of a bigger, more brute, physical football team in Utah simply pushing USC's lines around and dominating them to the point where Caleb Williams, a Heisman Trophy favorite, and he's already won one last year, the odds-on pick to be the number one selection in the upcoming NFL draft, looked rather pedestrian against this Utah Ute defense. And I'll also say this Utah Ute offense looked absolutely capable with a pig farmer at quarterback, as Kyle Whittingham said. Jake, how much of a disappointment is Lincoln Riley at USC?
Yeah, I think the hard part for Lincoln is just there were expectations, but ultimately I think now those expectations are being adjusted, and that's the most disappointing part of it. When USC brought Lincoln in, the expectation was, hey, we're going to be going to the college football playoff here inside of 2-3 seasons at most. I mean, we're going to have a turnaround here. USC is going to get back to what they once were. Like, we're going to be a powerhouse again. And I don't doubt any of that. But I think we're grossly underestimating how long it takes to rebuild a program from scratch, because that's what he's had to do here. Essentially, like, yeah, you brought some talent from Oklahoma, and sure, USC had some talent, but you don't just, install your system overnight inside of one season. You don't just, turn into a college football playoff contender in one season. That's not how this game works. And so to me, yeah, has he been disappointing? Yeah, I think there was so much hype around him. He's been a little disappointing, but I don't think he's been surprising. What has he been? A really good offense, a really crappy defense, and they've played a ton of high-scoring games. And then when they play really physical teams, they get pushed around. That's who Lincoln's always been. He's staying on brand. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, yeah, he's just some huge disappointment. Yeah, it's been a little disappointing. I wanted SC to be better, but they're not there yet, and that's the reality of it.
That is, and Lincoln Riley knows, man, we're not playing great right now, but we're going to get better.
Expectations wherever, kind of all over the place. We come in and probably, by and large, overachieve in a lot of ways. And I think fair to say that the team last year probably did overachieve. Year two, this is a different step, right? Everybody expects you to be good, right? Everybody expects that you could have a championship caliber team. And when you're constantly trying to live up to those expectations, you can kind of fall away from maybe what put you there in that position in the first place. And you can let disappointment of not playing perfect, or, when you won by 20 and you didn't win by 40, and all the outside noise that comes with that, like, it can get to you. And I think at times, fair to say, it's got to this team. And I don't think in a negative way, but we've had to really fight the urge to I think we've really had to fight to keep things on our own terms. It's part of our progression, and it sucks. I mean, it kills you, but this program will be better for
it. You got to appreciate and admire his confidence, because they're in it right now, and I do think he has a point. We did too well last year, and everybody expected better this year, and we have let you down, and I appreciate that he's owned it. But I think the other thing that you have to own is that Kyle Whittingham's a better coach than you are. And it's time to start pulling punches. It's time to start spinning and finding, let's not, find ways to downgrade Utah and Kyle Whittingham. Let's start saying what the truth is. Utah's a better program than USC, and Kyle Whittingham's a better coach than Lincoln Riley.
Facts.
I don't know why it's so hard for America to say that.
Because I think outside of Utah, outside of the state of Utah, people don't want to accept that Utah's a better program than USC. They just don't. Utah's not as sexy as USC. Utah's not Southern California. Utah has all these external things that it can't change, supposedly working against them, yet they come out, what is this, 3 years in a row now? 5 games in a row now, both there and at Rice Eccles in Salt Lake, and beaten USC. So I think that's why. I think people, like, we're watching Pat McAfee today and they're making Mormon jokes about the state of Utah. Not appreciated, dude. And that's what I think everyone wants to do. They want to say that Salt Lake is just a bunch of Mormons and it's all LDS and we just want to make a bunch of jokes. And Kyle has set all that aside and said, I'm going to run a super tight ship here. We're going to be really disciplined on defense. I'm going to take my best offensive talent sometimes and make them defensive backs and safeties because that's what's necessary. And you're seeing the fruits of that labor. And so we can all sit around nationally and disrespect this program year in and year out. But it seems like every single year we get 8-9 weeks into the season in college football.
Yep.
And everyone's like, oh, wow, Utah's good this year. No, they're good every year. You guys just don't want to say that.
Yeah, and Witt knows it.
Trophy winner quarterback, and so they're going to make some things, and that's just the way it is. But we got ourselves a pig farmer at quarterback, so we're proud of that guy too, and love him.
There he is, a pig farmer at quarterback, and Bryson Barnes. We have to stop reasoning and fighting to find ways not to give Utah credit.
Yeah, because if Caleb Williams had taken the shot that Bryson Barnes had taken and then gotten up and drove his team down the field to go kick a game-winning field goal, it'd be Caleb Williams for Heisman, screw Michael Penix. That's what we'd be talking about.
Yeah, and I think with game day coming to Salt Lake City this weekend for Utah and Oregon, I mean, it's going to be a hell of an atmosphere. And I think when that was Bush League by Pat. And it's interesting. We've been talking a lot of Pat McAfee lately. Pat openly talked about the fact that he's hearing it. People don't like him on game day. And I think it's things like using Mormon and LDS as a punchline. And I'm not Mormon and I'm not LDS, but I just think it's low class. Like, you don't have to do that.
Yeah, I think that people don't like the lack of professionalism. And you said something today while we were watching his show that made a lot of sense, which is, hey, Pat's not exactly doing a lot of talk showing right now. He's doing a lot of put a guest on and talk to the guest. And I think that's really interesting because we've seen that change since the move to ESPN. And so then when the guests go away and Pat starts just talking about game day and where game day is going to be, which makes perfect sense.
We get LDS and Mormon bombs.
Yeah. And again, I'm not LDS or Mormon either. Not from Utah,
no.
Right? And I love living in Utah. But somehow, like I was saying, my point before, dude, everyone thinks that this state is just LDS land and it has nothing to offer. And how the hell could they have a top 15 football program in Salt Lake City? How does that work exactly? Well, I'll tell you how it works, because nobody pays attention.
Yeah.
So then Witt's going to go out and he's going to work that poly pipeline and he's going to find his defensive backs and he's going to find that talent that he needs to run his system. And I'm starting to get concerned with Lincoln that Lincoln doesn't have a defensive system as a head coach. Lincoln hires a guy who has a defensive system as a head coach. And that's a problem, in my opinion, when you're trying to win national championships.
Yep. RB says they jealous. The Mormon women are 10s. You know what I think it is? It's easy. That's what I think it is. And I think it goes to, like, you look at Oregon fans, being racist and chanting at BYU fans, and it's the easy punchline.
Yeah.
And I think it happens all the time.
Yeah, it's lazy work is what it is.
It really is. And it's surprising. It's surprising to me that ESPN lets Pat get away with that. Or maybe it's not. I don't know. OG Gary, wait, Monty is not Mormon and not going to die early and a salamander lover. Why didn't I get the memo? It's funny. Somebody said to me several months ago now, I think, that I'm old and I'm Mormon, which means I'm going to die soon. And I have no idea what that's a reference to.
In God's name, image, and likeness.
Let's see. Monty is a dry Mormon. I'm not sure what that means. So, Sydney, Salt Lake City is liberal enough the Republican gerrymander our districts to dilute our votes. Wrong show. To Todd Father, when he said SOB a couple of weeks ago to that kicker kid At Washington, I figured this would happen. Yeah, there was some of that.
I just think that Pat thinks that his show is bulletproof right now. And
I think that's the truth.
well, I don't think that's the truth.
Yes, it is.
I don't think that's the truth. I think that Pat McAfee, from a life standpoint, yeah, you're not going to burn down Pat's house or anything. You're not going to. He's so well off from the NFL and now from YouTube and everything that he's built pre-ESPN that, yeah, sure, he will be able to do his show as long as he wants to. But what I mean is publicly, when you're talking about being connected and married up to ESPN, that opportunity doesn't continue if you're going to continue to make a mockery of it, which in my opinion, he's working on doing. I understand. Okay. Hey, you don't want to wear a suit. Your shtick is that you wear a tank top and it's a bunch of dudes talking sports. And I'm fine with that. I don't particularly have that much of a problem with it. But if you're going to do that and then you're going to be unprofessional with the things you say on your show, you're going to run into issues with companies like ESPN and Disney. And that's what I think Pat doesn't quite understand yet. And so to your point, I'm just curious how long ESPN allows these things, because when you're talking about taking game day to Salt Lake City because Utah just embarrassed Lincoln Riley at their place and you make a Mormon joke because it's Salt Lake City, I just don't think that if you're ESPN, you can allow that to go on forever.
I do think he's bulletproof. I do think he thinks he's bulletproof. I do. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Greg Hawkins, who's been...
Dude, I am so happy for you, man.
For me, because he's been a member of the show for 9 months?
For us.
I'm happy for Greg because he's got a beautiful family now. He's got this beautiful little baby. Him and his wife are, like model making machines. Like, it's unbelievable, Greg. I appreciate you being here. Once went to a USC Utah game with the Utah marching band. They had people dressed up as Joseph Smith and were trying to make fun of Mormons. We were like, wrong school, but it was still yikes. It's wild to me. The abuse that BYU takes, forget it. Like that, you go back to Duke volleyball, or again, the slander and absolute bigotry of all kinds. JT Realmuto just struck out at a pitch at his face.
The fucking donkey.
The Phillies are pressing there to lose this
Lord.
game. 3-1 into the third. Arizona over Philadelphia, who's had multiple opportunities to blow Merrill Kelly out of this game and haven't done it. Unbelievable. But the slander that BYU takes because of the LDS Church and the name Brigham Young, I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, I think that for the difference between BYU and Utah when it comes to the LDS stuff is I think for BYU, they just expect it because of their setup, right? Because you're founded on the church. It's the easy button. It's been going on for decades. Like, that people are just going to run that out there. You like, as a football player, you expect the jokes when you're standing on the bench. Like, as an athlete, you just expect it. And that's unfortunate, but it's the reality of the situation. And I think for Utah, the difference is that Utah has no connection to the church. Utah is not founded on that, yet they still hear those jokes.
And Witt is a Mormon who went to BYU, right? But
But I think how many people know that? Seriously, how many people know?
I think
that's the case.
I think most people think that everybody in Utah is a Mormon. Everybody thinks I'm Mormon. Everybody. I don't know why. I've never espoused to be a member of the church. I've never claimed. I mean, in these parts, claiming to be to have a temple recommends like claiming to be a federal cop. Like, like you're impersonating a federal officer if you think you have a temple recommend, or you tell them you do and you don't. Right? You'll get shot on sight inside of a temple. But the point is,
So you better check yourself.
The point is, everybody thinks I'm Mormon.
Yeah.
Well, you're from Utah. Are you Mormon? I cannot tell you how many times I've heard that.
Yep.
It's crazy. Brandon Butler, Grinch's qualifications. He played Madden once and Tecmo Bowl a few times. The guy's been a defensive coordinator at Oklahoma, Ohio State under Urban Meyer. Like, is he the problem, or is it Lincoln Riley? I don't know. He's been a part of some pretty dang good defensive staffs.
Well, the reality is it's Lincoln's problem one way or the other, but the question is, how is it going to get fixed? Because I don't I do think talent is part of the issue for their defense, but talent doesn't make up for the just egregious tackling technique that you displayed against Utah. I'm talking about missed tackles all over the place for USC's defense.
I just think they're not talented enough.
Wow.
That's the issue. I mean, you can coach a donkey to be a horse, but he's never going to, run the Derby. I don't know how you fix what they have besides bringing in better personnel.
Yeah. And then when Lincoln, flips his roster over in the portal, are we going to criticize him like we did with Prime? Because that's what he's going to have to do to get that defense, right? You're going to have to cut probably 20, 30 kids and then roll it over.
You're going to have to cut I say this all the time.
Yeah.
You're going to have to cut the bottom 25% of your scholarships, man.
Yep.
That's how you fix it. Jeremy Callahan, if you could combine Lincoln Riley and Kirk Ferentz, you would either have the greatest coach of all time or an asshat that never won a single game. Well, yeah. Kirk Ferentz, does he have a win on his coaching record, or has he just lost every game? Is it Kirk Ferentz one of those guys that nobody recognizes what he's done? I think he probably is. Boyd Lake, have you seen how old these Latter-day Saints get? Not dying anytime soon. Boyd Lake, the SEO king of America. Tanner Plummer, Monty, a dry Mormon is someone who already acts like a Mormon but isn't baptized. Bro, have you hang around me for 10 minutes, my language will tell you I will never, ever have a temple recommend.
I try to stay calm and not curse.
Not that I'm asking for one, but Jim R says Pat's ego's out of control.
Agreed.
Pat McAfee is the Joe Rogan of ESPN. I don't know about that. I think Joe is.
You know what I respect about him? Joe is somebody who, before he got into all the drama at Spotify, was somebody that didn't care what you thought and would basically say anything that came to his mind. And then when he got in some trouble for the things he said during the pandemic, which we're not going to get into, but he said some things and got in trouble, he changed his tune a little bit. He reeled it in a little bit. He became a little bit more professional and had much more detailed and in-depth conversations.
But that's very true, because notice you do not hear the wackadoo craziness on his show you used to.
No.
And I do think it is really interesting. I give Joe Rogan a lot of credit. You don't have to like what he says or agree with what he says. The guy built an empire.
100%.
Right? And I think he's just somebody who has a really strong opinion. We should not try to squelch that. But the problem is he's making, I think it's $15 million a year from Spotify now. Like, he's a behemoth. The guy is massive, and that doesn't even include anything he does outside of that. Joe Rogan's built a business and an empire, and he deserves to be applauded for that. Same as Pat McAfee. The problem is Pat's got a much larger stage, and he's getting exposed a little bit. And now, much to your point, Jake, will he evolve the way that Joe Rogan has?
Yeah, Joe's making, by the internet's rating, $200 million over 3.5 years at Spotify. So that's $57 million a year.
My bad. That's wild. That is absolutely wild.
So that's why I say, like, Joe's reeled it in. And I think that I don't think that Pat McAfee said to himself when he signed that ESPN deal, oh, I'm going to have to change X, Y, and Z on my show. I think he thought he had to change one thing.
I agree.
Hey, we can't curse the first 2 hours or whatever it is while we're on the 4-letter. And then we can do that on the last hour. That's just not the case. You got to be more professional.
Yeah, and you can curse all day long if you go to TridayTrading.com/Monty, because then you'll work for yourself from home. So it doesn't matter what you say. And trust me, you will curse in exuberation when you start looking at how much money you make as a day trader. And I'll tell you,
right, T.
I will tell you, it is really I love it. Mrs. Monty's in the program at TridayTrading.com. Go and do it, you guys. You have nothing to lose. It's a couple of hours a week to get through their 30-day trial membership. You can play as much or as little as you want. It costs you nothing. You make a $10 charitable donation. Triday Trading is going to immediately start having you trade. They're going to teach you all the indicators. They're going to show you the software. They're going to show you the process. You immediately get assigned to a coach. It is a fabulous process. And in 30 days, you're going to learn more about day trading and making more money than you imagined you could. And all you have to do is Sign up for a $10 30-day trial membership at trydaytrading.com. And watching it, it is fascinating. You make trades, you program them all in, and you just watch it happen. And what most people do is they program it and they walk away, because you will get caught up in it. You will stare at it. You will be emotional about it. You will be passionate about it, because you're watching this money just roll in. And it's really amazing to watch. And my wife is, I tell you every day, she's a rock star. She has a big corporate job and she's still making time to day trade. And it's just something that I'm so proud of her for, because it takes a certain cut of person to be able to pick it up so quickly. But trydaytrading.com makes it so easy. Go get it. Don't take my word for it. It's $10. It is $10. Everybody's got $10. And if you don't, man, save it and go get that $10 30-day membership as soon as you can. Don't wait for next month. Don't wait for next week. Go do it right now, because it will change your life. As soon as you get involved in that program and you start understanding how, I'm not going to tell you it's easy, but you start seeing what's possible and the money that you're going to make, it's over, dude. And I'm telling you, I just love it. I'm hooked on it. I love watching Mrs. Monty trade. I love watching her work with her coach. I love talking to her about it because she's so into it. She's fascinated by it. TryDayTrading.com/Monty. Go get that $10 30-day trial membership. Make sure you tell them you heard about it on the Monty Show. Thank you, Aaron Wilson, who gifted a Monty Show membership. Aaron, how come you haven't gone to TryDay Trading yet? Dude, you are the perfect candidate for TryDayTrading.com.